In one of my previous videos, I covered the concept of aggression, which I defined as behind center distance, the dip, the angle of aggression, and the gathering length. In this video, I'm going to cover clearance and the bed knife front face thickness. So this drawing is 4:1. If I measure the front face thickness like that, I'm getting about 0.200, which means scaled down, this would be about 0.050. Now, if we keep the same aggression dimensions as we did in the last video, our shear point is behind the bottom of the reel, 0.325. That's the BCD. The dip, that's the distance below the shear point that the reel blades are dipping down, is 0.021. The height of cut, that's the distance from the shear point to the baseline, is 100. Since the distance from here to here is 100 and the thickness of the front face of the bed knife is about 50, and that means our clearance is going to be about 50. Our gathering length, that's the distance from here to way over here where the reel blades start to dip below the shear point. That is double the BCD, that is 0.650. If I were to lessen the aggression of this mower somehow, there are several ways to do that. If I do that using the same bed knife or a longer extended bed knife that has the same dimensions, let's say that I put that shear point somewhere very close to the bottom of the reel. What's going to happen is I'm going to readjust the rollers so that my height of cut is still 100. That will be the distance, again, from the shear point to the baseline will be 100. And my BCD will be 0. And my dip will be 0. Height of cut is still 100. My clearance is going to be reduced from 50 to 39. Gathering length is going to go to 0. So this setup is much less aggressive. In fact, it has no aggression, but there's more bed knife in the canopy. Now, I have never bothered to measure the front face thickness of a bed knife because I think the clearance is much more telling. So to measure the clearance, it's actually so quick and easy, it's stupid simple. I just use a tapered gap gauge, and I have my height of cut gauge up here or some bar. I've actually got a bar that will hook on to the bed knife and hold itself up. That makes measuring the clearance even easier. And I slip the gap gauge in from the side, and I make sure that I'm measuring the smallest gap. Usually it's right up here, but sometimes, for example, on a QA5 or Jacobson, the gap may be reduced back here. Anyway, I'm going to measure the smallest gap at any point on the bottom of the bed knife with a tapered gap gauge, clearance gauge, we can call it. There are several of these on the market. All of them are made in China. Even the Starrett branded one is made in China. I have found them to be very accurate. I also have been designing my own. This one was 3D printed, and I was surprised in how accurate it is and how I actually prefer using this one. One reason it's theoretically more accurate is because it's much bigger. It's not nearly as thick, so the distance between the graduations is much longer and easier to read.